Hello, my name is Gabriel Bryant, and on behalf of the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services, Engaging Males of Color Initiative, and First Person Arts, we welcome you to Letter to My Father, Letter to My Son, Evolutions. About 5 years ago, we held our first program dedicated to amplifying the important stories between fathers and sons and the intricate personal narratives of tragedy and triumph and how both fit into their overall emotional well-being. We thought it only fitting, after such a difficult and challenging year, to revisit those same themes with new storytellers and a renewed sense of hope and healing. So once again, welcome to Letter to My Father, Letter to My Son, Evolutions. Hope you enjoy.
A struggling workaholic. I have 3 jobs, I have 2 titles at my main job. And I reflect on why I'm always working and always chasing a career path. And I have come to realize I'm chasing my dad's old ghosts. My dad's a wonderful guy, a proud Philly guy, and so talented, so loving, so impactful in my life. But I've always kind of felt he has unfinished business that I'm trying to fulfill. He ran for office, I ran for office. He did radio, I do radio. And I just always feel like I'm never doing enough. And so I also don't want for my sons to have that feeling that dad didn't do all he could, or dad fell short in some way. And so that's my biggest fear, is that as a father, I'll let them down. As a son, I'll let my dad down. That I didn't get done what I should have with all the fortunate blessings I got being a Latino growing up in Philadelphia. Very few people in my position getting these opportunities that I've had. But what I've learned as I've become a father to 2 wonderful boys is that your boys teach you the biggest lessons. My oldest was born in a crack house in North Philly under very challenging circumstances. By the time he turned 1 year old, he lived with us and we became his parents. And so he's had his own challenges dealing with the past and the trauma of his birth and learning recently that he's adopted. But that resilience that he has and the resilience of being our son and learning and growing like every other kid and every other young boy inspires me. My youngest son's a character. He taught me another lesson recently I wanted to share with you all. He had a school project where they asked him 2 questions. What does your dad do for a living? And what's the thing you enjoy doing with your dad the most? His answers kind of surprised me. The first one was, my dad helps people because he cares about people. And so that was a great lesson to me because it showed that what your children see in you, oftentimes you don't see in yourself. And the other piece he answered wasn't vacations, wasn't going to the pool, wasn't going to Cub Scouts. It was around throwing around this little ball we got in the house. I'm not talking about a football. I'm not talking about a basketball. I'm not talking about a Nerf ball. I'm talking about a little $1 dollar store ball that has pimples on it for no apparent reason. Me and him throwing around this little cheap ball means so much to him. And so it makes me reflect on what the true meaning of being a father is and being a dad. And it's not about trying to achieve some unfinished business or old scores with your dad or try to achieve some level like an impressive LinkedIn profile. It's about being for your kids every day and showing them consistently what really matters. In the case of my kids, I think I was showing them things I didn't even realize. And I am working on more self-care, getting outside more, trying not to work as much, spending more time with them with sports and other activities. But I am coming to grips with the fact that my dad didn't fall short. What he did was he created a foundation for me to build upon. And I hope I'm doing the same thing for my sons. So I'm so proud of my kids. I'm proud of being a dad. I'm proud of being from Philly. I'm proud of being a Philly Puerto Rican. And I'm thankful for this time with y'all today.
Dear Noah and BJ, in Tupac Shakur's song, Keep Your Head Up, he says, "Don't blame me. I was given this world, I didn't make it." Well, your mama and I have worked long and hard to give you a world that we, two black kids from Detroit and Kalamazoo, couldn't imagine. I write this letter from the comforts of our 5-bedroom home in Lower Merion, Pennsylvania. Right now, you're at school, an elite private school, where the tuition for the 6th grade costs more per year than the college I used to work at. But you already know that. You only have access to this education because your mama works there. Last weekend, we traveled out of state and watched you chase your dreams on artificial turf baseball fields. 20 years ago, your mama and I laid in a twin bed in a University of Michigan dorm room and dreamed out loud about what we're living right now. Don't blame us, but living the so-called American dream as a black family comes with some nightmares too. Your mama and I aren't dumb or naive. We knew that there would be psychological and cultural risks that came with raising 2 black boys in white spaces like the ones where we live, learn, and play. One of the earliest, rudest reminders came back when you were little guys, like 6 and 4. It was a random weeknight where your mama and I didn't feel like cooking, so we went to the Chipotle less than a mile away from our house. We were in the middle of figuring out whether or not you wanted chicken on your quesadilla when Noah asked, "Are we allowed to eat here?" Being the educator that she is, your mom answered the question with another question. "What makes you ask that, babe?" Your reply was as innocent as it was accurate. "All the workers are brown, and all the people eating are white. Are we allowed to eat here?" Your mom and I locked eyes and without speaking knew we had 2 choices. 1, redirect the conversation back to with or without chicken and play dumb. Or 2, try to explain the socioeconomic context behind those black employees and white patrons in ways that a 6-year-old could understand. Needless to say, we got our food to go this day and chose the latter. And those masters and PhDs didn't prepare us for that conversation. This was one of the first, but it certainly won't be the last conversation we have about being black men in white spaces. You're just kids, 12 and 10 now. But when the cops pulled up and gunned down 12-year-old Tamir Rice, they didn't see a kid. They saw a threat. I didn't make it, but in this world, your being, your bodies are a threat. I got the mortgage payments to prove it. This home is ours. But it only takes one insecure neighbor who thinks this neighborhood is theirs to question your being in it, setting off a chain of events that your mom and I may not be able to stop. Trayvon Martin taught us that. That's probably the hardest part about being parents of black boys. Having to teach them that their physical and psychological safety may be dependent on their ability to make split-second, emotionally charged decisions about when to stand up and when to fall back. And that's not fair. As you get on the other side of puberty, and your shoulders get a little squarer, and your voice gets a little deeper, and your politics grow a little blacker, your self-advocacy, your articulateness in school may be perceived as aggressive by your peers and teachers. In sports like baseball, with good old boy coaches, they're gonna want the aggressiveness and athleticism associated with black male stereotypes, but they don't want too much of the drift, and they don't want any of the politics. You already learned this from Brother Kaepernick. And yes, the girls have already started FaceTiming. Most parents, white, black, brown, green, and everything in between, tend to try to protect their teenage daughters from teenage boys. And we haven't had this conversation yet, but there's a long, complicated history that explains why black men's sexuality is perceived to be more threatening than other boys. So why am I writing this letter to you? We want you to know that there's a method to our madness as parents. Believe me, we don't be tripping just to trip. But there's a reason why we don't allow you to FaceTime with girls in private. Just like there was a reason why we didn't let you watch hours of Nick Jr. and Nick Teen, but allow you to watch Blackish damn near till your eyes bleed. We don't play tennis, but there was a reason why we made you sit on the couch and watch that black excellence named Serena Williams. There's a reason why we made you recite County Cullen's Hey Black Child at the school talent show, and why we drag you across this state to make you attend my lectures and speeches. And it's because the single most important responsibility we have is to equip you, our brilliant, beautiful black boys, with the knowledge and skills and dispositions to be your best, most authentic, unapologetic self. So yes, you can blame me. We gave you this world, but we're gonna make it better. Together. Love, Dad.
Letter to my son, Gabriel. If you're reading this letter, this means two things. One, that I'm no longer on earth with you in a physical form. And two, that my letter has finally reached you. My son, you have changed my world. For the 3 short months, you gave me hope and made me become a better man. For that, I thank you. I remember when I found out that you would arrive soon. I was so scared because I was not ready to grow up. Yes, I was the baby of the family at 23 years old, living a carefree life. It scared me to have to grow up and become a man filled with responsibilities. Each month that your mother carried you, I matured. At first, you were going to be named after me, but your mother and I decided to reverse my name and name you Gabriel Naeem Johnson. We wanted you to have your own identity. When you finally came, I just cried. Everybody was there. Your aunts, your uncles, your grandmoms, and they cried with me. And when I first looked at you, I seen me and you. I was scared to hold you, but you brought a new meaning to me. I had to go buy Pampers. My money was no longer my money. I had to go find a job. I went back to school and I was working. And if anybody knew me, they knew I couldn't do both, but I pulled it off. I was hoping to move us into our own place, which I was saving for, until that day came that I could no longer be there with you in the physical form. On July 4th, 2017, I went to work just as any other day. Came rushing home to you, to hold you, to smell you. And we were sitting out on the back deck and we fell asleep. I was holding you, just looking at you. And I was awoken by a phone call from your grandmother, Kim, and we talked. And before we hung up, I said, Mom, I love you. And like she always say, I love you more. Then I got another phone call. So I put you down and gave you to your mother. I walked out the front door, and that's when I was ambushed. I was shot in my legs and I fell. Next thing I know, I'm in Roxborough Memorial Hospital. Holding on, I was fighting in between both lives. I wanted to stay, but God told me I had to leave. And next thing I know, the doctors came and told your grandmother it was nothing more they could do for me. She had to let me go. I know that was a hard decision for her to make, but she did it. I heard the first time you said Dad. I saw your first footsteps. And let's not forget the first day of preschool. If anything you taught me, son, was to be the man that I was afraid to be, was to know that I could do it. And that is my letter to you, my son, Kyrie Naeem Johnson. I used to didn't want to cry. I used to think it was a sign of weakness. A lot of people, when they first go through such a loss, they pick up habits. I, for one, I started drinking a lot. I knew it wasn't the answer. And it wasn't until one day I was putting out the recycling bin and I had to find another box to put the beer bottles and the liquor bottles in. That's when I said, oh my gosh, this is getting to be a problem. I find myself sometimes in a low place, and things that help me get out of those low places. I surround myself with like-minded people. I had to join a group called Moms Bonded by Grief, where we just don't talk about our losses with our children. We do arts and crafts, we go out places, we do rallies, and we're there for one another when we have birthdays coming up for a deceased child, or if someone wants to go to the graveyard, or we do things as a group, as other hurting moms. I also, for self-care, I had to go see a psychiatrist because the pain was just so intense. And it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel lonely. It's okay not knowing how you feel. But just don't stay there. My motto is, every chance I get to wake up, I lift my head up off the pillow and I pull my body up out the bed and put one foot in front of the other. And guess what? I'm moving, I'm going, and I have a chance to get it right, to touch somebody else's heart.
One of my favorite songs is You Don't See Me by Al Jarreau. One of my biggest problems is seeing the individual trees in my family tree, because I see the trees in the community forest, and I love them both. I live and die for them both. So what does a black father do when he sees his presence as a poison and his absence as a present? I choose libation in lieu of lament. I love letters. When I was in college, I'd get letters. All the brothers at Morehouse, we get our letters. It made you feel important. It made you feel loved. It made you feel that you were mattered, that you were missed, cared about, seen in your absence. I still, at the age of 56, have many of those letters today, over 30 years later. But I wasn't much of a letter writer myself. And when I did break down and write, it was only because I was responding to something someone had sent me or said to me. Anything else would require a vulnerability that at that time was beyond me to offer. I still struggle with that level of authenticity till this day. Dear Edward, because I refuse to form my lips or my heart to say Dad. I always told myself that you must live far away outside of Philadelphia. I sometimes even assumed you might have passed away. It's no way that you could be this close by and not check in on your children. Boy, was I wrong. So needless to say, when Deke found out that you lived in a nice apartment complex on Broad Street, my heart momentarily sank because my fantasy and the facts collided. The truth would be the only resolution. Deep remorse, my only present. When we met, I was clear that you couldn't be my father anymore. I was already a college graduate and a grown-ass man by then. But maybe there was something else we could salvage. We tried, I think. Your daughter, my sister, more than either of us. We failed. I guess this intimate relational thing is not in our DNA. So at least I get it honestly. Knowing that mattered. At least you got to give your grandson, my firstborn, a present in lieu of your presence for his christening. Dear sons number 1 and 2, I apologize for my sometimes toxic presence, especially as it spreads pain, trauma from my unresolved father void, which I often denied. I believe that it was more urgent to bear the weight of the world on my shoulders than to bear the responsibility of being fully present and available for your hearts. I rationalized that growing up without a father, without uncles, without brothers, and being a man of the community should offer me some grace, empathy, and forgiveness. I thought it was okay to see the forest, even if your view of the tree in front of you was a little blurry. They also say, if you know better, you should do better. But that ain't really true. And there's a hell of a lot of battling between knowledge and trust. Doing better ain't a given unless people show and teach you how to get better so you can become better and therefore be better. But I didn't really trust or see those people, so I soldiered on, often leaving pain, trauma, suffering in my wake. What does a black father do when he sees his presence as poison and his absence as a present? Son number 1, I wore the shirt at your graduation Friday from the master's program. You commented on how nice it was and that you liked it. That mattered to me. And I know that mattered to you. The invitation mattered. You're welcoming me, your mother welcoming me, your congeniality, your comfort in my presence, all of that mattered, and that was a gift to me. I wore this shirt today as a present to signal to you that I see you, I hear you. I didn't do a good job of that when you were younger. You're about to be 28 and you still think for your 10th birthday, I gave you a pencil. Let me explain. Me and your mother planned a surprise birthday party for you. Everybody was to gather at the restaurant. So the actor, comedian that I am, I wanted to play the part. So I acted when you woke up that morning, I forgot your birthday. And so when you hinted that, hey, aren't you forgetting something? I said, oh yeah, it's your birthday. And I gave you a number 2 pencil as a mock gift, knowing what was in store for you later. I don't know how memory works when you're in pain, but for some reason you choose to forget that I had a big part to do with the surprise party later. And to this day, you tell people I gave you a pencil for your birthday. What does a black father do? When you don't see the tree, because you're too busy focused on the forest. Son number 2, when I asked you at the age of 6 what you wanted to be, you said everything. That statement was one of the greatest gifts I've ever received, because it signaled that they nor I have dampened your sense of possibilities as a black boy. That's my biggest fear as your father. And now you're nearly 12, you aspire to be an actor, because as an actor, you have to learn and become anything if you want to be good at it. I saw this game. It reminded and reminds me of you. You can be everything because we could be anything. I'm glad you still believe that. Dear Edward, because I still can't really form my lips or my heart to say dad. I stood in the hospice and watched you fade away. The brain tumor robbing you of any lasting memories or meaningful connections that could comfort you in the afterlife. So I refuse to offer you the presence of any solace, any forgiveness during the last moments. Looking back, I guess I should say sorry. But maybe now you understand how I felt, longing for a presence and a present that went unrequited. I wanted to carry that same stoic distance into the funeral as I heard so many people whisper about how I look just like you. But I broke down and cried like a baby, realizing then that any chance for our reconciliation in this lifetime was no longer an option. It died when you died. Thank you to your wife for reaching out and forging this bittersweet moment. My book, Why Our Children Hate Us: How Black Adults Betray Black Children, was published the same year that you perished. But in case you're wondering, it wasn't autobiographical. It wasn't even biographical. I never knew you or knew enough about you to tell any revealing stories. Dear John T. Gorance, I see you now, grandfather, and this is a posthumous thank you. My father's absence made me seek more from the other men who were available around me and to me. And maybe my father's absence made me set expectations and standards for them that were unfair, maybe even impossible. And that fueled a resentment and a disappointment. But thank you to those who stepped in and stepped up as Edward stepped out and stepped off. You know your names. Those who are ancestors now and those who are still living. But most importantly, thank you to my grandfather, John T. Govans. You taught me well by your walk and your model. Though you were a few words and slight stature, a little man who always stood tall. You modeled what it means to stick and stay in the midst of it all. Your unwavering presence in my life was my present, though it took me way too long to appreciate your true worth and value. I want to be like you, except for that early dying part. I don't like that thing you did. I probably wouldn't have spread so much pain if I would have heeded your wisdom and understood your way earlier. I honor your presence in the pouring of libation, Ashe. And a liberation letter to myself. Sometimes today, sometimes like today and like right now, I have to remind myself to remember myself and remind myself that through it all, like John T. Govans, my grandfather, I stuck and stayed, and I stood and stand tall. I take pride in being thought of, seen, and known as a good brother, a strong black man, struggling to bring black life in the midst of the terror dome. That is my offering. Dad, I hope you see me.
I am a second-generation Chinese American. This is my story of me, my complicated relationship with my father, and how his relationship with his father played a role in his absence during my childhood, but also his return into my later years. In my story, I hope to share how traditional parenting practices and cultural expectations upheld by my grandfather tainted the relationship between my dad and him, and also how my dad's rough experience shaped our own unique relationship as father and son. So if you had asked me what I know about my father, I can tell you that he speaks 3 Chinese dialects. He loves to cook, and it's hard for him to say no when you ask him to do something. He's also really handy around the house, and he enjoys building and fixing things. And also, strange thing about him is that he walks with one foot pointed outward as he takes steps. But these are things I've only recently come to know about him. In truth, I actually didn't know much about my father when I was a child. He was rarely around, so I hardly got the chance to talk to him or spend time with him. And at the age of 2, my parents had divorced. So soon after, my mother took on the responsibility to raise me in China, while I had no recollection of who my dad was. It wasn't until I was 5 when I developed my first memory of him. He came to visit me in China, but he was looking to bring me to America to stay with my grandparents at the request of my grandfather. When I arrived in America, my father disappeared and only visited me from time to time, while the parental responsibility was passed on to my grandparents. This left me clueless for years to come to question why my own father would abandon his responsibility to raise and look after me, and why my grandfather took me away from my mom. So throughout the years of living in the house, I would begin to harbor a lot of resentment and bitterness towards my dad. A major contributing factor to this was my grandfather and how he treated me. My grandfather was a very stoic, stern man who never expressed any warmth or affection and held very high standards for men in the house, which is typical given that he was raised in a patriarchal society like China. My father was the only son in the family, which prompted my grandfather to be very harsh and strict towards him. And these expectations were also planted onto me. My grandfather was very particular about things around the house, such as no talking during the dinner table, and always corrected me on how I should behave and act around the house when I was being loud. And I lived with 3 cousins, but I was always the first one to get targeted whenever something broke in the house or someone was being loud. And overall, living in the house felt very oppressive, and I blamed my dad for leaving me there and never being there to defend me. The resentment and bitterness was also tied with what I thought of him as a person. Living with my grandparents, I came under the influence of much family gossip around my dad. My grandpa would often repeatedly recite what a disappointment he was to a family, like a broken record, for never following my grandpa's orders and wishes. And all this gossip really just painted my dad as some sort of immature and irresponsible alcoholic. And ultimately, I fell victim to all the harsh words being said of him, and I started to lose respect for him. And honestly, I felt embarrassed to call him my dad. I eventually started to convince myself that he will never be the fatherly figure that I wanted him to be, and for me to just stop expecting him to show up for me. This would drag on for years until my teenage years. So the moment when our relationship started to take a turn was when he came to my grandfather's house one day to talk to me. I was 13 at that time, and he wanted to tell me that my grandfather was getting sick and old. And he was also alluding to the fact that my grandfather would no longer be capable of taking care of me soon. So he asked me this: "What do you think about me raising you?" And this just left me speechless. I mean, I should have been happy to finally have the opportunity to spend time with my dad, but for some reason I just couldn't bring myself to feel that excitement. But instead, it was just all this resentment bottled up inside of me. It was just rising to the surface. I couldn't help but think that he was just forced in this position to take care of me, and how I would be exposed to all his negative influence. Well, against my will, I started to take weekend trips with my dad to his apartment in Philadelphia. I never looked forward to this because of all the pain he caused me, but the more I started to spend time with him, I started to look the other way. He was always making sure that I was having a good time, and we went on to experience some memorable trips together, such as visiting places like museums in Philadelphia, the Niagara Falls in Canada, and Times Square in New York. And during these moments, for the first time, I started to feel some sort of connection, like tenderness and warmness between us, which is something I'd never experienced before, growing around in the household with my grandfather. I vividly remember one incident that really made me have a change of heart, which was when he promised me that he would quit smoking after 15 long years. Now, to me, this was a big step to show how he was willing to sacrifice and change himself for us. And I really respected that. And something I will always hold dear to my heart are the memories of us where we worked on renovating the house we were expected to move in together. To me, repairing this house was symbolic of me mending my relationship with my father. And it was the start of something new, a life with my father around. In the years we spent living together, I gradually felt more and more comfortable calling him my dad. Now that I'm older, I've come to understand that being a father certainly wasn't easy in the perspectives of my grandfather and my dad. My grandfather had a rough life trying to raise 4 kids with nothing to his name when he immigrated to America. As a result, he did everything he could to raise his kids to be tough and strong and hardworking to succeed in America. But this would actually take a negative toll on my dad, because he later admitted that he experienced a great deal of trauma growing up around his father, which has left a mental scar on him. While his father never gave him the opportunity to raise me on his own, he would rarely come home because he just did not want to face his father in all of his harsh and demeaning words. Now, after getting to know my father and talking to him, he made it clear to me that he did not want me to go through the experiences he had when he was a child. I know that there were many flaws with how my grandfather and father handled parenting, but I want to reassure them and tell them that they did their best. So, to my grandfather, I never got the chance to tell you this before you left this world, but although we never really did get along in the house, I'm really grateful for all the blood, sweat, and tears you have shed for the family, which has enabled me to grasp all the opportunities I have in America today. I love you, Grandpa. And to my father, I know you've made plenty of mistakes, which still hangs over your head today. But I want to remind you that, I don't blame you for the things you have done, because I know you were young. You're still trying to figure out all the complications behind life and being a parent. But I'm grateful for you and everything you do for me today. I love you, Dad. And I thank the both of you.
So I'll start with Dear Dad. A lot of people called him Cody or knew him as Cody. I write this letter, share this story as you passed February 20th, 2021, after a battle with COVID. After that happened, I've been spending a lot of time reflecting on the impact that you had on me in my life. And it reminded me of a lot of different stories that helped shape who I was, that you helped shape who I am. And one of them kind of makes me smile mixed in through some of the pain. I was a child, I was young. I was going to basketball camp. That was one of the things that we shared together. 11, maybe 12 years old, I wanted to be a better basketball player like you. So we decided to go to basketball camp. You decided that I was going to basketball camp. It was sleepaway camp. It was Cheney University. And at 11 or 12, I wasn't really sure how I felt about spending that much time away. I was a kid. I was a daddy and mama's boy. I didn't know what it was like to be away. And I was scared. I'll admit it now that I was scared. And I remember that in that moment, you said to me, you don't ever have to be afraid, because there's no place on earth that I can't get to you in 24 hours. It's weird that, I'm an adult now, so your father telling you there's no place on earth that can't get to you in 24 hours. Now that seems kind of ridiculous, but at 11 or 12, it was empowering, it was comforting, it was the thing that I needed to hear. And so I went. And as fate would have it, I didn't really like the basketball camp, and I called you and you were there in 6 hours, so you proved that that was true. But as I reflect on it now, that moment, that at the time just meant, Dad will come and get you, you're okay. That moment was that foundation that you set in telling me that you would always be there. You established that at 11 and 12 for me, but you then spent the rest of your life living up to it. And it shaped me into who I am. It gave me the comfort to go through things, so many things in life. And I remember talent shows, and I was nervous and I was afraid, and I look out into the crowd and Dad was there. And it was okay, because he was there. I remember playing basketball. Thought I was the man. I was pretty good at basketball, but I remember sitting there in the locker room and everybody else was nervous. Was their family there? Are their friends there? And I was relaxed because there was no doubt in my mind that you were there. I didn't have to worry about that because you would be in the stands. I recently looked at a picture, posted it on Instagram, these Throwback Thursday things or Flashback Fridays, and I actually posted a picture just because it was me doing a radio show. And I was there with one of the Eagles players. I was there with a longtime friend. And I posted the picture because it was Throwback Thursday. I thought it was a fun picture. And somebody pointed out to me, look in the background. And I looked in the background of the picture and I hadn't noticed it before. And you were there. Hat backwards, talking to somebody, not making it about you. It was my time to shine, so go do the radio show. But I'll be there because there's no place where you can go that I can't get to you in 24 hours. I have a quote up on my wall that says, "My father never told me how to be a good man. He just lived and let me watch." Both the beautiful thing about having a father who was impactful not just for you, but for other people throughout the city, country. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also a challenge because you're grieving very publicly. You are in a situation where sometimes, as much as I love my father and I miss my father, sometimes I just want to go to work, and because of the man that he was, I appreciate all of the outpouring of love and support and people who want to show that level of support, but it feels like you have to relive it every day, everywhere you go. But I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying to understand that you can't have the positive relationship, the loving relationship, the support, the person that you look up to and want to be like. You can't have all of that without it really hurting when you lose it. I want this letter to be a thank you, to tell you that I appreciate that. I appreciate the safety of always having my role model, my hero, my best friend there to handle these situations. I appreciate that. And I think it hopefully made me who I am today. But at the same time, I'm learning what it means as a grown man in tears. I'm learning what it means for the first time as an adult to not have that safety net. I'm having to learn how to teach myself that it will be okay. And I will, because you taught me how to do that. So I thank you again, because not only did you show me that strength, teach me that strength, but you also have allowed me to hopefully be the person who can pass it on to other people. I smile now when I tell people, my little sister, friends, even mom, I've said to them, you don't have to be afraid. There's no place on earth where I can't get to you in 24 hours. Trying to give them the same comfort that you always gave me. So I thank you. I love you. I will spend my life trying to continue to make you proud and missing you. I guess that's it. Love, Bill.